Alright, it's time for another controversial woodworking video. I don't know why any of this would be controversial, but I'm sure by the end of this video at least one person will be typing in all caps in the comment section. So basically this video is my top 3 tips if you're just wanting to get into Western style vintage panel saws. A couple of other tips. One in particular you might want to pay attention to. It has to do with fire, possible fire in your workshop. So, quick aside about me, I have been woodworking since the 1970s, late 1970s. I used to have a wood and metal fabrication shop. Over the years I have reduced the size of the things that I make to the point where I am quite comfortable in an 8 by 12 shed workshop. I am what you would call a hybrid woodworker in that I use both power tools and hand tools, but I am too old to be a hipster. The original hipster was Buddy Epson. Google that dude. He was like the original hipster. But anyways, I do. Some people will say I have hipster qualities because all of my power tools are vintage 1950 cast iron. Table saw, wood lathe, drill press, bandsaw. All vintage 1950s craftsman cast iron. I'm also a hybrid woodworker in that I use both Eastern and Western style tools, in particular hand tools, and also the things that I make. I make a lot of Japanese inspired or traditional products, as well as a few Western products. But I just don't have a need for these big panel saws anymore. So I've been in this workshop about 2 months, and I'm still kind of moving in. And I had these panel saws up on my workshop door. And I noticed in a couple of the videos that they were looking kind of janky. They needed some TLC. So I took them down and I was cleaning them, and that's when I thought, maybe someone might be able to use these tips. I don't use these anymore, but if you're making the types of things where these would come in handy, here you go. So basically, tip number 1, don't compete with the collectors. It's kind of weird to me that there are collectors of saws. Are there collectors of hammers and screwdrivers? I think there are. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if there were collectors of nails and sawdust. But vintage sawdust, it's not my bag, but whatever. So, but I truly believe there's still a place for these vintage Western panel saws as a tool, not just for collectors. But the ones that the collectors want, they're going to be in pristine condition and they're going to pay top dollar. Well, what's the point of getting that when you could go to Harbor Freight and get this impulse hardened Western style panel saw with impulse hardened teeth for $9.99, $9.99. These work just great. And you might say to yourself, well, but they're not as well made. No, they're not. They're not as accurate. Ooh. Let's take a moment. Hopefully no one starts typing in all caps in the comment section just yet. In woodworking, there are only 3 types of cuts. You heard me, there's only 3 types of cuts. There is, you cut for speed, you cut for accuracy, and you cut for appearance. Rarely are all those 3 cuts in the same cut. Paul Sellers can do it, Graham Blackbird can do it, the rest of us probably can't. So usually you're going to be cutting for speed, ripping or cross-cutting with a panel saw. Then you may switch to a back saw, a carcass saw, sash saw, whatever, and then go to a shooting board, for that final fit and finish. So there's three types of cuts. Panel saws are usually in that first category. They're there for speed. You're cutting for speed. Almost always with these. So anyways, so tip number one, don't compete with the collectors. You're wasting your money. You might as well go to Harbor Freight and get the cheapo. You're cutting for speed. When these are well tuned, they will cut very quickly. They will cut just as well, if not better, and with nicer handles. So the second tip is rust is your friend. Get the rusty ones. The collectors don't want that, because what they want is they want that pristine saw that has that still has the etching where it says Henry Diston, Philadelphia, whatever it is. The rusty ones, usually when you clean it, that's the first thing that goes, is that very faint etching. So that it's useless, it's worthless to the collector, but to the user, it's actually better, because you'll end up with a thinner saw, which is more efficient. If it's too thin as you're cutting, it can bind, but rarely is it going to be that thin. So tip number two, get the rusty one, clean it up, wax it. I use paste wax on these. I recommend paste wax on that. And you'll get a thinner saw. It'll be more efficient. I'll get to the teeth in a minute. Just real quick, nomenclature for the saw. Imagine this like a foot, right? There's the toe, the heel, this is the spine, obviously the teeth, and this is the plate, and plate. So the thinness of the plate is separate from the teeth. The teeth are set. Sharpen them, set them, and then they will cut whatever kerf you want. If you're cutting a lot of green wood, you'll have a wide kerf. If you're cutting tight grain hardwood or harder wood, then you'll have a finer set. So rust is no problem. More than a shiny saw, what you want is a saw with a lot of life left on it. Some saws have been sharpened so much over here, they're just a tiny little spike almost, right? Where it's just down to, it looks like almost like that. That's a tired old saw. That saw I would not recommend. But if it's got some width to it here, it's got plenty of life left to be resharpened. So, tip number one, don't compete with the collectors. Tip number two, rust is your friend. Get the rusty one, sand them. You'll have a thinner saw plate, have a thinner saw, which can work to your advantage, and just make sure that it's got plenty of life left in it. Third tip, learn how to sharpen. Get a tooth setter. They're pretty cheap on Amazon. And Paul Sellers has some great videos on that. I don't know if Graham Blackburn does, but there's plenty of YouTube videos where the old timers show you the proper way to sharpen and set the teeth. That's really all you need. Don't compete with the collectors, because you're wasting your money. Get a wide, rusty one. Take the rust off, and you'll have a thinner, more efficient blade. 3, learn to sharpen and set the teeth, and it'll work for whatever you need to. You set it for whatever you need it to be set. Green wood, brown wood, whatever. Now I use paste wax on this. I don't do affiliate marketing. You're not going to see these products in the description down below. But this is just what I use. You use whatever you want. Just a paste wax. I would recommend for the saw plates, in order to prevent it from re-rusting, and then do that on a regular basis. And the handles, I recommend linseed oil, boiled linseed oil. I had to take the shellac finish off of a couple of these. 2 of these I bought, I don't know if I said this, 2 of these I bought like 20 years ago. I use them quite a bit. They serve me well. And then over the years, people are like, "Oh, you use hand tools?" Yeah, my grandpa had this old saw. It's just hanging on a nail in our garage. You want it? I'm like, I looked at it. I'm like, hell yeah, I want that. So I collected a few more, and they're in various stages of being taken care of. So paste wax for the plate, linseed oil, in my opinion, for the handle. The shellac or polyurethane, it just doesn't feel good. Especially when your hands start sweating, it's gets that plasticky feeling. You might as well go to the Harbor Freight one. But linseed oil, it feels great. You need to reapply it every couple of months. Problem with boiled linseed oil, and hopefully you guys have stuck around till this, is that boiled linseed oil has a tendency to spontaneously burst into flames. You didn't know that, did you? So when I use boiled linseed oil, I have a couple of soup cans, and I put the boiled linseed oil rag in the smaller one, and then put that in there, and then it goes on a brick outside where there's nothing around it. At some point, I'm actually going to get another metal pail and really go crazy. Some people put them in water. I do this and I let them dry out. Those are my tips and tricks for Western style panel saws. Why would you want to use it? Tradition. They're safer than a table saw, and they can be more economical. In fact, sometimes they can even compete. I got 3 for free. That's better than the Harbor Freight. All it took was a little bit of sandpaper and some time, and some paste wax and some linseed oil. Why wouldn't you want to use it? They require a lot more maintenance. You just don't like them. They're not as efficient as Japanese style hand tools, or you just don't make big pieces of furniture. You don't make big woodworking projects. So, has anyone started typing in all caps yet in the comment section? Hopefully it's not too controversial. Western style panel saws, highly recommend them if you make big pieces in your woodworking. They're great. Get into it. Talk to you guys later. Bye.